Welcome back to Better Odds Sports Betting. This is Kyle Hunter, your host today. I'm joined as always by Kiev O'Neill from the Odds Breakers. Kiev, how are you today?
I'm doing fine. It's a nice Friday today. Finally got Halloween over. I do have some Swedish fish left over here. I don't know how much longer it's going to last, though. I got to tell you, these things are pretty good.
Yeah, that's what as parents we have to go through and pick out a few, right? That's it. It's like, hey, you got four of these. I think I could have one of these at least. So,
Oh, you have to. It's rationing.
right. I mean, it's only for the best for the kids, anyways.
It is.
And guys, we're excited to be joined today by Stephen Nover. Stephen is a friend of mine that I've exchanged notes with over the years and respect greatly as far as his handicapping prowess. Stephen, how are you today?
Hey, how you doing, Kyle, Kiev? How you doing? I'm more a candy corn Kit Kat guy than that Halloween. I hadn't seen that one before.
All right, yeah,
I love Kit Kat, but candy corn, that's
what-
like there's people that love it and there's people that hate it. There's nobody in the middle.
Yeah, I was going to say I go for the Kit Kat out of those two.
Candy corn became controversial. It was always my favorite. Now I find out it's not very healthy at all. So I figures I liked it. So
Yeah, it is. Listen, I have to say, last weekend I was circling the subdivision trying to do trick or treat and then hustling back to watch the games. And one of my smaller plays for last weekend was the Florida State and Clemson under. And I walked in on seeing that one lose by the laterals back 40 yards and they fall into the end zone.
You already knew it was going to happen the first lateral.
Oh, I know. He ran backwards about 15 yards and you're like, okay, that's it. So, but
that could have been the worst bad beat of the year.
It was a really bad one, and I bring that up to vent here just for a minute, but I think I probably don't want to think about that game again here the rest of the year after this. And that both
Clemson's
those teams
first cover. It was Clemson's first cover.
I know, and imagine that's how they cover, right? Of course they would,
goodness,
because they were down there in the fourth quarter pretty late, so that was a ridiculous cover for Clemson as well. But guys, we have 3 college football games to get to this weekend, 3 NFL games to get to. But first, Stephen. This is your first time on the show, so can you let everybody know? I know you've been in the industry for quite a while, and you've been very successful. How'd you get your start in the industry, and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm probably unique how I got in the industry. I was always a sports writer, and I'd written for daily newspapers in the Midwest and the South, and then in the mid 80s, I was hired by the Las Vegas Review-Journal. So I came out to Las Vegas and I was covering the UNLV football, basketball teams. And then I became their sports betting columnist. And I really got to know all the sharp bettors out here, the bookmakers, the odds makers. I became a part-time odds maker for Roxy Roxborough and really got to learn the industry and just got to pick the sharpest brains. And then I left the Review Journal and started writing for websites, and that kind of metamorphosed into actually doing picks and putting into place everything I learned and everything, and was developing contacts and things. And then they stopped paying for writers, and so then I just became a full-time handicapper, and so that's kind of a full circle how I'm in with you sharps. That's
I appreciate that, Stephen. You've got the long career of success, and I know that our viewers will appreciate your insight as well. So let's get into some of these games, guys, and I think we can find some games here where we have some opinions, and some of these will not have any strong opinions, but hopefully at least one of us will have a lean on each of these games. Let's start out with Wake Forest and North Carolina this weekend. Wake Forest undefeated coming into this game. North Carolina, clearly has been disappointing so far this year compared to what they were expected to be. So the question is, how much does it matter to you that Wake Forest has a weak strength of schedule, 83rd so far this year in strength of schedule? Dave Clawson, to me, a superb coach, really underrated. His team's 47-33 against the spread as underdogs. So, you get an underdog Wake Forest team up against a North Carolina team having real serious trouble protecting Sam Howell. UNC with a negative 16 sack margin, so really having trouble on the offensive line. Always capable of making big plays is North Carolina. I think Sam Hartman probably deserves to get more hype than he's gotten so far this year. He's played really well for Wake Forest. PFF grade, he ranks behind only two guys, Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett, so far this year. Just 1.3% turnover-worthy plays. That's tremendous. So both of these teams, really big plays, 29 plays of 30 yards or more for Wake Forest, 30 plays of 30 yards or more for North Carolina. I wanted to bet this over when I saw the matchup, and immediately I saw 76.5, 77. I was like, well, anyways, I guess I'll just move on because, it's really hard to take that high of a total over. That's probably what a lot of these MACtion totals are going to end up being based on how the MAC games went this week, honestly. But, if I had to bet this game, I would definitely bet Wake Forest. Wake Forest on the money line is my lean here. I think Wake Forest being slightly disrespected, and North Carolina's been so inconsistent, it'd be hard for me to back them in a game like this. Kiev, what are your thoughts on this one?
It's funny. You look at these two teams, Wake Forest, undefeated, very shocking. I mean, there's a great system that goes, if you bet the favorite of an unranked team playing a ranked team, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's up in the 60 percentile at least, that the favorite will cover the unranked team. But this is a pretty massive difference. This is an 8th ranked team versus a North Carolina team that really, like you said, has disappointed a lot of their fans and people. You look at the pace in this game, you expect it to be bigger. North Carolina has slowed it up a little bit since last year, I've noticed. They lost a ton of talent to the NFL, 2 huge running backs and 2 huge receivers, really. And I was concerned about that when they entered this season myself. Now, I'm looking at the strength of schedule. You got to give it to North Carolina for sure, playing teams like Notre Dame, a few others. But then all of a sudden you look at Wake. Was their schedule that bad? Facing Syracuse, Louisville, and Virginia, very middle of the road ACC teams. And by the way, how did that Virginia game not go over when they played Wake Forest after you saw what happened at BYU with Virginia? It was the most exciting first half, as far as offense, I've seen, going all the way up to 80 points. Just looking at this game, I like Wake Forest here. I'm waiting for a 3 personally, but there's a couple ways to approach this here. I think that Mac Brown is kind of turning into the guy that got fired from Texas. They don't step up. They don't have any big wins. Both teams are equal in yards per play, so you would usually favor North Carolina from that. But then you look into the red zone success, and this is where it tells the whole story. Wake Forest ranks 8th in red zone scoring, while North Carolina ranks 86th in red zone scoring. So there it is right there, telling you what's been happening with Sam Howell over there. My power ratings has this game closer to a pick 'em because I have Wake Forest power rated above North Carolina. I don't know who doesn't have that. So that's why I'm waiting for that. But can you really trust Wake Forest defense? Well, let's buy some insurance here. Let's go to Geico and hit that team total over 37. And that's where it's going to be, 40 to 37, being that they're a dog. I like that team total a lot because, 3 points past the 35. I honestly think the only way they lose this game is just by giving up more points and more yards to North Carolina. So if you take like a 1.5 on Wake Forest as the dog and the team total over 37 for an equal size bet, I think you're onto the right path.
Yeah, I like that one as well. And since it should be a high-scoring game, if you want to kind of leave out Wake Forest defense, then that's a good way to look at it. So, Stephen, what are your thoughts on this game, Wake Forest and North Carolina?
I'm not used to seeing Wake Forest, being in the top 20 and being undefeated, past the first week or something. I looked them up, and the last winning football coach that they've had for their career was P. Head Walker. That was back in the 30s and in the 40s. I'm glad you guys analyzed this thing very well because I really don't have an opinion on this. Gun to my head, it's one of these situations where the ranked team is the underdog to the non-ranked team, and I'd rather go with the odds makers with their knowledge. North Carolina to me is a tough team to predict, and I like the quarterback a lot, Sam Howell, as do the pro scouts. He's could be a top 15 pick, but as you guys mentioned, North Carolina, it's hard to get a handle on them. So it's a pass for me.
That's fair. I think North Carolina games do have enough variance that it's kind of hard to predict what Tar Heels team we'll see. Guys, let's go to the next game. Texas and Iowa State. Texas and Iowa State. Kiev, I'm going to let you start on this one. What are your thoughts on Texas, Iowa State?
Well, absolutely. Can both of these teams this is perfect matchup because very disappointing, right? These teams to their fan bases, the way Texas started, the way they beat Louisiana. Then you have Iowa State, very hyped. I think they're preseason top 5 or 6, if I remember correctly, in the AP poll. Iowa State was getting a lot of love, but Iowa State is kind of the Nebraska of the Big 12, the way I look at them. Very disappointing. They're outgaining a lot of their opponents and losing because of poor efficiency, turnovers, and reasons like that. Now, the Clones have a big matchup advantage, and that's what I like here. And this is kind of why I think it might finally be time to buy into Iowa State. And you see this spread is starting to get closer to 7. If you want to check that out on BetUS. Rushing the ball 5.2 yards per play, while Texas gives up 5.2 yards per play. Now, the Bijan Robinson is the big name that everyone talks about, but Iowa State's ground game is just as good, if not better. They also have a 1.13 net yards per play advantage over Texas. They both struggle in success rate, and they kind of crap out a little bit when they get to the plus side of the field for some reason. But just from the matchup itself, I don't see how Texas stops the Clones, and I think the Clones will get some stops against Texas. This is going to be a pretty high-scoring game, so I'm going to give you a lean to the over for sure, and I'm still considering that, but I could be a player on Iowa State when it's all said and done.
I think that's fair, Kiev. I think that was a bit harsh. Iowa State is the Nebraska of the Big 12. Nebraska. I think that was a backhanded. Nebraska has been
that's for all the people that lost money on Iowa State this year, because a lot of my friends. I'm glad that I stayed away.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I still think Matt Campbell's a good coach. It's just they got so much hype. Maybe that hype train got a little bit out of control for Iowa State. They're still a team that could beat just about anybody, but they've been too inconsistent. That's obviously pretty common among college football teams this year. But, Iowa State to me still has the higher upside of these two teams. And as Kiev mentioned, you can head over to betus.com. If you want to sign up there, you can get 125% sign-up bonus using the code BetterOdds. I've worked with BetUS with the college football show this year, and they've been great people to work with. Great sports book if you don't already have it to sign up there. Stephen, do you have anything here for Iowa State and Texas in this one?
Not much, Kyle. I'm not going to get involved in this game, although two of the best running backs in the country here with Robinson and Hall. I will point out this, though, and this is a plus for Texas. It doesn't, I think, get as much as attention with Iowa State because you look at their skill position stars and things, but they are extremely weak on special teams. Iowa State. They're ranked 117th in kickoff coverage and 119th in punt coverage, and that really hurt them against Baylor. I think Baylor brought back a kickoff return for a touchdown. They also have one of the worst net punting averages. So, this could factor here, and I think it's definitely a check mark in Texas's favor.
And just real quick, that is why they're the Nebraska of the Big 12, because Nebraska completely screws up their special teams. So thank you, Stephen.
All we need now is Adrian Martinez at quarterback, I guess. And I think Brock Purdy's been a bit disappointing compared to what some people thought he would be. Like when he was a freshman, he played pretty well and it looked like he was going to be a great quarterback. And while I don't think he's a bad quarterback, he's not been tremendous by any means. As far as me in this one, I did have this one down as Iowa State's really bad special teams. If you look at PFF, they're 74th in overall special teams grade. Texas is 31st. We know Texas has a really good kicker. Texas had some really bad turnovers last week. I had the over in that Texas and Baylor game. I feel like that one should have won. And really Texas probably should have beaten Baylor in that game. They had some key turnovers on the other side of the field. Iowa State gives up 38 points against West Virginia last week. And I don't know who would have seen that one coming. Jarrett Dagey in West Virginia, not exactly an offensive powerhouse, 38 points on them. And I know some Iowa State fans are pretty unhappy with some of the calls in that game. Having said that, Iowa State gives up 38 points to West Virginia. So I didn't see all the bad calls or supposed bad calls that they were talking about. But, Iowa State shouldn't have put themselves in that kind of situation either. They are ninth in the nation in yards per play margin. This is a team that certainly looks really good on paper. And I think that does kind of point to what Kiev is saying. On paper, they look better than what they've been on the field. Probably not quite as bad as Nebraska, but it's a fair comparison at least. Brock Purdy, inconsistent, very talented. Breece Hall's very good, but the Iowa State offensive line hasn't been tremendous. Kiev, my numbers actually tell me that this total should be lower than what it is. Having said that, I don't want to bet an under with Texas. I don't trust unders with Texas at all. That Texas defense is really, really bad. I mean, just a really bad defense, 106th in yards per play allowed. I think this is probably a spot where Iowa State can put up quite a bit more on offense than what we've seen from them. Maybe even it's a breakout game for Purdy against this defense. So if I had to bet this game, I also would lean Iowa State here. I think you probably want to go ahead and lay the 6.5 if you like Iowa State, because like Kiev said, I think this is more than likely going to go to a full touchdown here. Let's go on to Navy and Notre Dame. I'll start on this one, guys, just because I want to be really quick. I don't really have any in-depth thoughts here. I think Navy is that really pesky team that you can't figure out how are they staying in these games? How do they have a chance to pull upsets? I mean, look at their game against Tulsa. I don't believe they completed a pass in that game, and then they won. Obviously, we know that that's kind of Navy style, but still, that's pretty extreme. Navy cares a lot about this game. Does Notre Dame care as much as Navy does about this game? But Notre Dame is so much more talented. They're 39th in rushing play success rate allowed. Navy's unique triple option kind of tests that, though. Navy is 90th in special teams rank at PFF, and Notre Dame is 21st. So a big mismatch here. But the point spread is so large here with this low of a total. So I really don't have any lean on this game. Kiev, what are your thoughts on this game?
This is, looked at as a rivalry to some people. They do play each other quite often, right? I almost think it's every year minus the COVID year last year. But Navy isn't what they used to be since Perry left, right? Since their quarterback left, that was just kind of beating everybody. And, option teams are very Jekyll and Hyde from year to year many times. I love option teams when everyone's a senior, but Navy hasn't been able to catch up. Now, I did get a nice win with Navy against Tulsa last week. And it's kind of what I've noticed is that they slowly improve throughout the year, and option teams that start out bad slowly improve. And all of a sudden they're as good as the other option teams at the very end. I'm not saying Navy's going to be as good as Army or Air Force, but they are improving. Now, Brian Kelly knows how to play the option. And he's done this before. I remember when Navy was a top 15 team, I believe, Notre Dame faced them and Notre Dame destroyed them. Back in 2019, it was by 32 points. And it was just interesting to watch because there was so much of the betting percentage on Navy that game. Now, here's the issue here. Navy is showing really bad from a yards per play perspective at minus 1.9. But the reason that I tell everybody why I don't have Notre Dame as a top 10 team with one loss is because they're negative net yards per play at negative 0.1. My metrics don't agree with them being a top 10 team. Now, they do finish off games, which is great, and that's something to be considered. But this spread, I have the number perfectly at 20.5, and it's going up to 21. There's a reason I think it's going to 21. There's a perception that any team out of the top four, now that the football rankings are out, is a bet on team. You're going to see a lot of public coming in on teams like, oh, Notre Dame's upset, Oklahoma's upset, right? And you're going to see these spreads starting to go up higher and higher. This could be true sometimes, but it's definitely something you can't bank on. So I don't know what to expect. I know that Navy's going to try to slow down the game. They're going to go for every single fourth down from their 40-yard all the way through to the end zone. So if they are able to get those fourth down percentages, they will cover this spread. That's why I'm staying away from it. I have no lean in this game.
Stephen?
Well, Kiev, I've got a few years on you, and so I can say Navy hasn't been the same since Roger Staubach left. So,
Yeah. You can go back.
I first started watching football in '63, and I watched Navy, Army Navy, and Roger Staubach was the quarterback. I actually remember that. All right, you guys, you put it on me since both of you are basically taking a pass on this game. So I didn't give an opinion on the first two, so I'll give an opinion here. Navy's getting better. And I guess if you're going to take 3 touchdowns with them, you might as well take under 2 because they're not going to win a shootout. It wasn't just beating Tulsa, but the week before that, 2 weeks ago, I mean, these guys hung in there against Cincinnati. They doubled the time of possession on Cincinnati. They had more rushing yards in Cincinnati. They had more first downs in Cincinnati. And there's a big injury here. Notre Dame's basically healthy except for one guy, Kyle Hamilton, who is the best player on the team. He's a safety. He's the best safety in the country. Could be a top 5, 6 pick, which is unbelievable for a safety. The guy's that good. He didn't practice yesterday. I don't think he's going to play. I don't think Notre Dame. Why risk him? So you have to factor that in. If the point spread isn't factoring his absence, it should, because he's actually worth something, in my opinion, on the line. And Notre Dame, their running attack is coming along. Williams has looked real good. The offensive line is finally starting to maybe get some experience and play better. But I think Navy at plus 21, and they can control clock. And, I think they're worth a shot here.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, Navy has a way of uglying up those games and keeping them low scoring and staying in it. Like you said, Stephen, that was really something that they played as well as they did against Cincinnati. Even some of the post-game win expectancy said Navy should have won that game. That was an interesting one, and I don't think that type of game helps Cincinnati's case, obviously, in the playoff, and that's something for a different topic. But the college football fan in me kind of wants to root for a team like Cincinnati to make it in. I don't think that they'd actually beat any of the teams that they were up there against, but it'd be nice to see one of these group of 5 teams actually make it in. I think it'd make it pretty interesting. So we'll see what happens on that. Let's switch over to the NFL side here. And I know Steven's really good at the NFL. I'm going to let Steven start us off with this first game here. Vikings and Ravens. I don't know what to make of this game, Stephen. The Ravens coming off a bye. They were blown out by the Bengals in that last game. Then, of course, the Bengals go and lose to the Jets. I'm kind of used to that as a Bengals fan. They have one nice win and they can't back it up even against a bad team. But the Ravens coming off a bye week, the Ravens have been kind of up and down this year. Do you have any opinion here on Vikings Ravens?
Well, first, Kyle, my condolences on being a Bengals fan. And, Ravens are off a bye, as you mentioned, and that's pretty important. Harbaugh's 10-3 off a bye. They're very well coached. They have one of the better defensive coordinators, Wink Martindale. He sounds like a game show host, with that name, but he's extremely sharp, and I think they're going to have a very good defensive game plan for the Vikings. On the flip side, I had high expectations for the Vikings. I actually thought they could win the division. Well, those expectations have been shattered. It's the same old Vikings. I've always liked Mike Zimmer up until the last couple years. He's old school, and he's not changing. The NFL these days, it's explosive. You have to be creative. He's not. He's too old school. Kirk Cousins, you want to like him, you can't. He's just a glorified game manager. I think the Ravens defense is going to have a good game plan. They're going to have an edge against the Viking offense, and you turn it around. The Vikings, 2 key defensive injuries. Peterson, their best cornerback, he's out. Daniel Hunter, their stud defensive lineman, he's got like half the team sacks almost. He's out. I know the Ravens really don't have any running backs. Latavius Murray is not going to play this week, but Lamar Jackson by himself is enough. Andrews, the tight end, is having a big year. I think the Ravens can put up enough points here. And coming off the bye, and I think the Vikings are on a real down cycle, been a big major disappointment. I lean to the Ravens here.
Okay, Kiev, what are your thoughts on this one?
So you know what's interesting about this is the Vikings' perception. I mean, when after the Cardinals beat the Titans and said, "Hey, we're for real," they're only 3.5-point dogs at Arizona. Now they're going to a Baltimore team that's definitely has offensive line issues, running back issues, secondary issues, and it's 6. So I'm like, did Minnesota take that big of a step back? Because I don't think Baltimore is better than Arizona personally. You know, they looked awful last week. The Vikings looked awful against Dallas, and I hate betting on teams that looked awful the week before. I think Zimmer's job's in trouble, and I think that Kirk Cousins has to take some blame too. So you wonder what happens. Can they step it up offensively? Well, the Ravens do rank 21st in dropback EPA on defense. So I believe that they will be able to move the ball through the air. But the Ravens have a massive advantage over the Vikings metric wise, 4.9 rushing yards per attempt. And part of that's Lamar. And the Vikings give up 4.6 yards per attempt, which is pretty bad for NFL. You know, the Ravens giving up passing yards, worst in the league, 296 per game. I like the over. And for all those reasons, I like the over. I took it at 49.5. It's at 50. I like it all the way up to 51, which is a key number. So a couple stars on the over is definitely a play for me.
Yeah, I could see that. Ravens off a bye is kind of an interesting thing because Harbaugh's a really good coach. In general, though, teams off a bye have kind of been overrated here the last couple of years. Teams off a bye playing against teams that are not off a bye, 24-35 against the spread in the last 3 years here in the NFL. The NFL changed the rule where you can't practice in the first week of that bye. And I think that's kind of changed things a bit without practicing for a week there. Having said that, Harbaugh's a really good coach. You would think he would have his team ready to go. It's hard to trust either team too much in this one for me. Zimmer's team's really frustrating. Kirk Cousins, I mean, it's not in prime time, so maybe you'd have a chance. But, you're up against a Ravens defense that, like Steven said, is really well coached. They're going to bring a lot of pressure. I would probably take the over too if I had to take something. So I kind of agree with both of these lean Ravens and the over in this one. Let's go to the Sunday night game, the Titans and the Rams. This one has changed a lot, obviously, guys, with Henry being out. This is a line that was 6.5, and it's up to 7.5 now. 67% of the bets are on the Rams, which is not too surprising given this situation. Tannehill's passer rating without Henry on the field has dropped quite a bit. I don't know if that's a large concern or not. I'd be curious your guys' thoughts on that one. It's not a huge sample size. I think Tannehill is a good passer, and he has some really good weapons on the outside. Tennessee with a pretty good offensive line. I don't think the Rams defense is as good as some people think it is. The Rams, the last few games that they've played, that their defense has looked really good. I mean, they have played some terrible offenses. So to me, I lean to the over in this game. I think the total coming down a bit to 53 or so. I think if I had to bet this game, I would bet the over. As far as the side, I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Steven, what do you think about this one?
It's an ongoing thing, Kyle. Just today, a couple hours before we came on the air, Titans announced that Adrian Peterson has made the active roster, and I expect him to have a role, if not a prominent role in the game, unless Tennessee falls way behind. And I agree with you. I lean over, but that may be a plus for the under if Peterson's going to get a lot of carries. At this stage of his career, he's just kind of a north-south guy. And, I got to know Julio Jones' status. It's a Sunday night game, so obviously would like to get involved. As far as a side, you tried to go against the Titans against the Bills. That didn't work. Went against them against the Colts. That didn't work. They beat the Chiefs. I mean, all these guys do is get disrespected and cover spreads. And you may think, well, it's time for a letdown now. How can they keep doing this week after week? But it's the Sunday night game. They're going to get psyched for it, the Sunday night game. And I think they've got they want to prove to the world that they're more than just Derrick Henry. So I think you're going to get Tennessee a good game from them. Whether it'll be enough, I'm not sure.
Kiev.
I disagreed with the initial move with Derrick Henry because it gives them an advantage somewhat to scheme now with running backs. Everyone knows what's coming when Derrick Henry, and then they can do whatever they want with their backs. They can start throwing it in the flat. They can even run some different types of jet sweeps and things like that. Just change things up, and it almost puts teams on their heels a little bit. And that's why I like betting on teams that have this. But unfortunately, I wanted to bet the Rams at 6.5 when Henry was in. Now it went to 8 and then down to 7.5. You get some more contrarians on it. It's a stay away and just a teaser leg for me now. The Rams are. And the reason that is because the passing advantage. Matt Stafford's number 1 in EPA per play for pass, and he's also number 1 in completion percentage over expectation. They throw the ball extremely well. Cooper Kupp might be the best receiver in football right now. The guy is just an absolute beast, fantastic route runner. Cooper Kupp is blown my mind. And then you throw Woods and the couple other guys they got there, Higbee, right? They just have a massive attack, and that's where the Titans are very susceptible. They rank 19th in opponent dropback EPA and 24th in opponent passing. So that's where my handicap was, but now it's past the 7, which I hate. Now my algorithm perfectly had this game at 7.5, and my power ratings had it at 5.5, but I was going to bet it. Now it's definitely a teaser leg for me. I do expect the Rams to win by 7 points or so.
Yeah, I think this is probably a good teaser leg. You like to tease those teams down through the 7 and the 3. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And we know that teasers in the NFL can be pretty successful. I think teasers in any other sport is a bad idea in general, unless you have a really low total, maybe in college football. I could see somebody teasing like the Army Air Force game or something like that this weekend. I've gotten a lot of questions about that total, by the way. Just ridiculous that we've gotten down to the 37. For years, it was easy to bet Service Academy unders, and now it's just been talked about so much that you just have to pass. And every time, I will say, guys, every time one of those goes and finishes 10-7, and I've passed on the under, every time I get frustrated. I'm like, oh, man, for so many years, I was betting every under, and I have to pass at this, and it still goes under. But I digress. So let's get into the NFL Monday night game. I don't know that this one's quite as exciting as some of the other games. The Bears are Kiev's team, so we have Bears and Steelers. I'm going to let Kiev start this one off.
Well, the Bears are not who we thought they were because people still think their defense is good. Their defense is not good. Khalil Mack banged up, foot problems. Eddie Jackson, now their safety, pulled his hammy. I expect him to miss this game. There's really only 5 or 6 players on this defense that deserve to start in the NFL right now, and they were already weak in the secondary. They gave up 8.4 yards per play to the San Francisco 49ers at home last week. There's a ton of holes in this Bears team, and they are getting way too much credit for winning against the Bengals, where that was just an implosion, and at Las Vegas when those John Gruden problems came in. The Bears are not a good team at all. You would think the Steelers can't run the ball this year, and you would think that the Bears rushing defense is good, but if you look at the stats, they're only 30th in opponent rush EPA. Now, do we have to even get into the Bears offense, guys? Every single metric just absolutely stinks on this team. The Bears dead last in offensive EPA per play, right? Dead last in passing. Justin Fields is lost, and now you throw TJ Watt at him. I don't know how the Bears are scoring this game. Even with the Steelers having such a bad offense, I think they find success here at home. And I think they cover the spread. I have the Steelers winning 26-16 here, and it's close to the total. But I can also see the Bears not scoring. So I'm playing the Steelers -6. I actually played them at -6. There's been some contrarian movement on this line, but I already played it at -6, a couple stars.
Man, I'm so torn on this game because it feels like laying that many points with the Steelers with this low of a total just feels wrong. At the same time, how many points are the Bears going to score, like you said? And then the total sitting at, 39 and a half, something in that area. in general, you want to think an NFL game at 39, you almost want to lean to bet the over because you can't bet an under at 39. But as you said, how are the Bears going to score in this one? I think Fields is kind of at a real disadvantage based on how that offense is set up. I think it's kind of hard to evaluate how Fields is as a quarterback, at least at this point. And even last week, he actually played pretty well there against the 49ers. And like Kiev said, really the defense let him down in that game. So I don't want to bet the Steelers here laying the points. I guess maybe that's a Bengals fan in me. I'm not a huge Steelers fan anyways, but I think laying that many points with Roethlisberger and this really vanilla Steelers offense is very hard to do, but it's hard for me to make a case to bet the Bears either. So Steven, what do you think about this one?
Well, thanks a lot, guys. Kiev, excellent analysis on the Bears, and Kyle, a good point about the over on such a low total. They had this similar total last week against the 49ers, the Bears. It was like, 39-40, and I had to go over that. It's like
it was one of the biggest scores last week, Steve. I think it was like it went to 50 some points, right?
Yeah, more just on principle. I hear you about the Bears offense, but and I know their offensive line is terrible, but you just can't go under on an NFL total in that 39-40 range. It's everything is skewed now, as we know, to the offense. And years ago, before all this, a 39 would be the equivalent to like a 36 total in the NFL, and you can't really go under those. I'm probably, I'm leaning over at this stage. I think Pittsburgh's got its ground game going. Their offensive line is, it's been 8-9 weeks into the season. They're improved. Kiev really touched on the Bears' injuries and how overrated the Bears' defense is, which I fully concur with. The question is, can the Bears put up points? I mean, they got two good wide receivers. I can't help it if they don't want to use Allen Robinson. The guy's good. It's just a tragedy that the guy, especially if you had him on your fantasy team. I'm a big Darnell Mooney fan. Kev, what do you hear on David Montgomery? Could he possibly be active for this game?
He can be activated, but Khalil Herbert's been doing fantastic anyway. Yeah, and so I can't give an upgrade really for Montgomery coming back, especially when the Bears lost to Fetty and a bunch of their offensive line. I think Kyle hit it when he says, we don't know what Fields is because Matt Nagy is such a terrible coach. There's a couple people like that. There's Trevor Lawrence. Is Trevor Lawrence as bad as what he's looked like? The answer is no. He just has a bad coach. Is Tua Tagovailoa as bad as he looks? I don't think so. I think their coordinators at Miami are absolutely terrible. But at the same time, you're going to give me a game where Fields is actually able to put up some points. Their defense let them down. You expect them to do that at Pittsburgh? It's not going to happen. I absolutely lean hard to the over with Steven, but I also like the Steelers to cover.
Well, with Fields, I like him as an over-type quarterback. I understand he's a rookie, but he's going to do something. He could break the pocket. He could throw a pick six. He can do things that favor the over. I can't stand these Colt McCoy-type game managers. Those are the guys I don't want to go over with. So, you give a low total like this, it's tempting to go over on these low totals.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is one of them where you'd almost have to hold the nose to bet it, but I think the over looks like it could be the right play, especially to number like 39. Guys, let's go into I think Kiev and I's favorite segment here as we kind of wrap up the show. We like to talk about an underdog that could win outright. We have to pick one of at least 3.5 points. We're not going to give you this 1 point underdog that's, plus 105 or something like that on the money line. So I'm going to go first here, Kiev. We might say the same game, so I'm going to try to jump in front of you. Seems like Steven, Kiev, and I seem to pick out the same game pretty often. So we can either go to college.
Great minds think alike, right?
That's what we like to say here. So
it's usually a good play when that happens because it usually wins too.
It usually is, to be fair. I'm going to go with Wyoming against Colorado State here this week. Wyoming plus 150 on the money line. This is a really low total game. This is a big rivalry game. Colorado State and Wyoming do not like each other at all. I believe they call it the border war or something like that. Colorado State has played at least somewhat better than Wyoming has, but Colorado State's coaching leaves a lot to be desired. We've seen several times where, they love to kick field goals on 4th and 1 from the 2-yard line, things like that. It's just, it kind of feels like where Steven said earlier, some coaches, it feels like the game has passed them by. And even in college football, a lot of the guys are starting to realize you have to be more aggressive than what you used to be. You can't just be happy with 3 points all the time when you're that close. And Adazio seems to be really happy to kick field goals. And then even at the end of that game, was it, I can't remember if it was Boise that they were playing. Anyways, they had one game where they couldn't line up in time, and the coaching staff didn't even get them a chance to kick a field goal that would have won the game. Just a wild game there for them, Colorado State. But in this one, I think Wyoming has played so poorly and turned the ball over so much that they're probably underrated at this point, because Craig Bohl's still a good head coach. They have a good offensive line. They should be able to run the ball some on Colorado State. I think this is a game where Wyoming can kind of sneak up on Colorado State because they've played so poorly. So I'm going to take Wyoming here against Colorado State. Kiev, I didn't take your game, did I?
No, thank God. I appreciate you going to the one of the more non, I guess, viewed games this weekend. I don't think that MAC game is going to get a ton of views, especially after Colorado State lost last week to Boise. But I'm going with Auburn. They're about plus 171. They're a 4.5 point dog. Texas A&M is getting way too much credit for that game against Alabama. That was some great coaching there by Jimbo. It was Alabama not having their best game. Heck, they almost lost to Florida. And you've seen what Florida's been lately, right? Not that good of a team. But at the same time, metrically, Auburn, it just keeps getting better and better. The only way that Texas A&M can move the ball is on the ground. Their quarterback, Calzada, only throws at 55% completion percentage. King's not back. Their starting quarterback from the beginning of the season. And they have Spiller there, but this is where Auburn can shine. They stack the box. 3.3 rushing yards per attempt is what they allow. Which quarterback are you going to take? You going to take Bo Nix, who's been balling this year, or are you going to take the other one? I liking the quarterback here. I also think that Auburn is kind of getting better, preparing themselves for that Iron Bowl coming up. This spread's too big, but I really like the money line at 171. Let's take it. Probably for a star.
It makes sense. Calzada hasn't been able to throw the ball except when he was against Alabama, obviously, somehow. I know that Alabama fans who are pretty frustrated by that one. It's like, where did this Zach Calzada come from? And, I don't think he'll probably be that good again the rest of the season. So, Steven, what do you have as an underdog that could win outright this week?
All right, here's my tease to this. What if I told you I could get close to double digits taking a team that may have the best quarterback in the country, certainly highly regarded by the pros, and it's perfect 8-0 the last 3 years when taking points. Liberty. I'm going to take Liberty plus 9.5 against Mississippi. Maybe you can even find a 10 out there. If Malik Willis isn't the best quarterback in the country, at least going by pro scouts in the NFL draft. I've been a draftnik for a long time. Matt Corral is, who happens to be the Mississippi quarterback. But Corral's hurt. He's going to play, but he's got a bad ankle. It's been bothering him for a couple weeks. He's had bad games the couple weeks by his high standards. I don't think he threw a touchdown last week. Didn't exceed 300 yards passing a couple weeks ago. He's not 100%, and Mississippi could be down their 3 best wide receivers. 2 of the 3 are questionable. The third one is out. And so their passing game could be down. Liberty is 8-0 going back to 2019 as an underdog. There's also another sidebar to this game. I got to throw in these journalism terms. Hugh Freeze, used to coach at Mississippi from 2012 to 2016. He was drummed out of there, did not leave under good terms. He's probably a very sleazy guy, but he's a good coach, and he's going to be psyched for this game. I don't know how psyched Mississippi's going to be. They've been playing a murder's row of SEC teams. They've got to be worn down, and they've got Texas A&M next week. Are they going to care so much about this game? I think Liberty cares more about this game. It's a huge game for Willis, to prove himself against an SEC foe. So I think there's a lot of things in place for Liberty to, if they don't get the win, to at least keep their streak alive of covering as an underdog.
Which coach is sleazier, Freeze or Kiffin here?
Oh.
Yeah,
That's
that's
a fair point.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like both of them are pretty good coaches. It's like
They are. Yeah.
they're I wouldn't speak to their values being tremendous, but they win football games and they cover spreads. I think Hugh Freeze has been the single best ATS coach in the country. If you go back several years, I know he's like 67-36 against the spread or something like that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And Steven, I like Liberty in that one. I think that's a good look. Money line there plus 290. So guys, I know if you love parlaying things and you love putting a little pizza money on an underdog parlay, it's going to be a pretty big price here with Liberty and Wyoming and Auburn this week. So let's see if we can get at least a win or two out of those underdogs on the money line. Steven, thanks for being with us. Can you let everybody know that's watching how to get your information?
Well, I'm on different various websites, pregame.com, Vegas Insider, Picks and Parlays, Sports Capping, Vegas Winners. I also have my own website, Steven Over Picks. So I'm out there, I'm around, and I certainly thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on with you, Kyle and Kiev. I really enjoyed it. You guys are super knowledgeable, and Kyle, it's always an honor and a pleasure to exchange notes with you, and appreciate you having me on. Thanks.
Oh, it was great, Steven. I think you had some great insight, and I think all of our viewers will enjoy it as well. So Kiev, let us know about the odds breakers.
Yeah, yes, and definitely pleasure was all ours, Steven. Thank you so much for coming on. The odds breakers, we have just such an amazing variety of handicappers, all kinds of different sports. If you like the ponies, you got the Breeders' Cup coming on. Make sure you guys go up there and check us out here at theoddsbreakers.com. Obviously, if you want to be a member, you can always subscribe, and you can get some merchandise throughout the year by doing that. You can check out our Discord. If you ever have a question about a game, we're going to give you our best thoughts on it. And heck, you might even show us a play that we didn't even think about. So please check out theoddsbreakers.com.
Yeah, definitely check out the Odds Breakers, and you can find my totals package over at the Odds Breakers too. That's all my totals as a monthly package. If you guys know me pretty well too, that's a lot of plays because totals are basically what 90% of my selections are. So you can check out my work at huntersportspicks.com. Sign up for the free picks newsletter if you haven't already. Go over there. I've lowered the premium subscription price here for the rest of the year for college football, 37-14 so far this year in college football. So it has been a great year thus far. Finished out a pretty good Major League Baseball season. Going to try to finish out college football well. And Kiev, college basketball is right around the corner. So been spending some late nights researching those under the radar college basketball teams. And I'm looking forward to talking about those soon as well. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Check out the BetUS College Football Show. Also, check out betus.com. Use the code BetterOdds. And we appreciate everybody being here today. Steven was great as a guest, and hope everybody enjoyed the show as much as we did. And we'll see you again next week.
Have a wonderful weekend, everybody.